1988, Demitri Zacharov was a 25-year-old soldier in a Soviet Motorized Rifle Regiment stationed in Afghanistan. Decades later, as a 46-year-old, he reflected on his past while smoke swirled from his cigarette. "I know of this place," he said, "the Shok Valley. We did not go there. There were no good roads and death was certain. For us, the war was an asylum and Jalalabad was our cage." The Shok Valley in Afghanistan was a natural fortress that remained unconquered by the Soviet forces during their invasion. At the end of the Soviet-Afghan War, the inhabitants of Shok Valley stood victorious against the Soviet war machine, but little did they know that more battles would be fought in the future. As geopolitical shifts happened and with the start of the U.S. global war on terror, the former freedom fighters became one of the most ferocious enemies of the USA. Helldivers 2 is a highly popular game known for its intense battles and endless waves of enemies. However, the Battle of Shok Valley, also known as Operation Commando Wrath, is a true story that deserves equal recognition. On the morning of April 6, 2008, a 12-man team of U.S. Special Forces Green Berets embarked on a mission widely remembered in U.S. counterinsurgency history. Years after the successful U.S. invasion of Afghanistan that aimed to topple the Taliban government because of their lack of cooperation in the global war on terror and their harboring of al-Qaeda operatives, Shok Valley still remained a big problem for the U.S. forces and their newly installed government in Afghanistan. An American think tank reported that Haig had been, after the initial coalition successes, sidelined from Afghan politics, but has recently re-emerged as an aggressive militant group, claiming responsibility for many bloody attacks against coalition forces and the administration of President Hamid Karzai. The plan was to drop Afghan commandos, led by American Special Forces soldiers, from the Operational Detachment Alpha, ODA, 3336 of the 3rd Special Forces Group into the valley using helicopters. Then they would sneak up on the fortified town by walking on the terrace slopes and surprise the Haig forces. The target village is fortified and guarded by highly trained foreign and local fighters. HIG has been amassing weapons and ammunition in the village for over 2 decades since the Russian invasion. The village sits on a rise of terraced hills above the valley floor, with multi-storied structures and a cliff edge that drops almost 100 feet. Even though no coalition force had ever entered the valley, ODA team leader Captain Kyle Walton and Team Sergeant Master Sergeant Scott Ford had every confidence in their commando counterparts. "We eat, sleep, and train with these commandos," said Walton. "We die with them too." As they devised their strategy for the 130-man assault team, Walton and Ford understood that their commandos would benefit from the considerable firepower and tactical expertise of the ODA, along with the added advantages a Special Forces A-team brings to the battlefield. Nearly all members of the Afghan commando unit possessed some level of combat experience. Support from 2 F-15E Strike Eagle aircraft, flown by personnel from the 335th Tactical Fighter Squadron, TFS, as well as a squadron of AH-64 Apache attack helicopters are also present. The U.S. team was composed of Walton, Ford, Staff Sergeant Dylan Baer, Staff Sergeant Seth Howard, Morales, Staff Sergeant Ronald Schurer, Staff Sergeant John Walding, Sergeant David Sanders, and Sergeant Matthew Williams. Staff Sergeant Zachary Reiner, a Joint Tactical Air Controller, JTAC, and Specialist Michael Carter, a combat cameraman, were attached to the team to photograph the mission. On April 6, 2008, before daybreak, CH-47 Chinook helicopters hovered skillfully above the jagged landscape. However, they couldn't land, so the troops had to jump out while still in the air. The team planned to enter the village quietly. As they climbed the terraced cliffs towards the first set of houses, it seemed like they might succeed, but nothing could prepare the coalition forces for the ferocity of an ambush. Surrounded on all sides, bullets whizzed through the air like deadly whispers, claiming lives with ruthless precision. The first burst of gunfire erupted midway through the line of troops, aiming directly at the vital command and control node, effectively dividing the team into 3 separate sections with ruthless precision. The C2 element, a small but crucial group of soldiers, contained the detachment commander, an interpreter, Bear, the team communications specialist, Reiner, the JTAC, and Carter, the combat cameraman. Walton's interpreter, the veteran of 6 years combat, fell dead, and next to him, Bear was hit in the leg. While treating Bear, Morales was shot in the thigh. Ignoring his own injury, he applied a tourniquet and pressed on. Another bullet tore through Morales' boot, shattering bone and severing his Achilles tendon. Walton, Reiner, and Carter swiftly engaged in suppressive fire, seeking refuge within a narrow crevice carved into the sheer cliff. Enemy gunfire relentlessly targeted the C2 element. Bear, still engaging enemy positions, stood mere feet away from Carter and Walton when a second bullet tore through his arm. Before aid could be rendered, another comrade attempting to assist was struck down by enemy fire. Walton maneuvered out from the cliff's shelter, unleashing suppressing rounds to shield Carter as he raced to aid the fallen soldiers, evacuating Bear to safety. Switching roles, Carter provided covering fire as Walton retrieved the second soldier. Higher up the slope, Staff Sergeant leading the Afghan commando advance, Sanders swiftly pinpointed enemy locations. His commandos unleashed a hailstorm of lead to ease pressure on the C2 element and prevent insurgent flanking maneuvers. Meanwhile, Walton, stationed with the C2 team, recognized the need for air support. However, securing assistance posed a challenge as his communications sergeant was incapacitated. Once more, Walton, aided by the JTAC, braved enemy fire to provide suppressing cover as Carter sprinted to retrieve the vital radio. Securing the radio amidst the chaos, the JTAC and Walton swiftly established contact with the circling F-15s, unleashing aerial support fire upon the enemy positions. Beside Reiner, Walton scanned the battleground, and the situation was not getting better. Walton's resolve hardened when Sanders told him via the comms to send in the Eagles, even though they were near the enemy positions. The earth trembled as the F-15s descended, their payloads raining destruction upon the insurgents below. As they engaged the insurgent force, Captain Pritchard Keeley, a skilled weapons system officer, and Maj James Scheidemann, a seasoned pilot from the 335th TFS, maintained constant communication with the assault force on the ground, circling high overhead. Thanks to the F-15 crew's powerful targeting pod, they had a superior vantage point to dominate the battle. ODA 3336 fought with unyielding ferocity, with their very survival hanging in the balance. While neck-deep in chaos, Walton summoned additional air support via the relentless firepower of AH-64 Apache helicopters to decimate the enemy's ranks. The roar of chain guns echoed the terrain, while the insurgents scattered like ants beneath the heli assault. Walton's men stood firm despite their dwindling ammunition. Walton knew that their window of opportunity was rapidly closing as the weather was becoming less conducive for air support. They shifted to controlled and accurate shots to maintain the fight and avoid being pushed back into passivity. In a moment of dire need, salvation came in from an explosion, drawing all eyes away from the battle. The airstrike reduced a massive building to rubble, creating a diversion that allowed Staff Sergeant Seth Howard to advance closer to the fray. Howard, a skilled sniper, swiftly eliminated targets, maneuvering his team to maintain pressure on the insurgents, while he shifted positions with his sniper rifle and recoilless rifle, effectively snatching the initiative from the insurgents. As Keeley directed the A-10 Warthog's descent, he spotted insurgents approaching the valley, which he quickly passed to Walton. Walton realized they needed to retreat from the battlefield. That is becoming like an alien swarm scene from Starship Troopers. Walton assigned Carter to accompany Sergeant Sanders, the team engineer, who would safely guide the wounded down the cliff. "We had to Spider-Man down the cliff to find ways," Carter said. "There were 20-foot straight-down drops. It was just a bad place to be." Once the escape route was mapped out, Ford orchestrated the medevac and arranged for the less severely wounded to assist in evacuating the more critically injured. Ford was struck by sniper fire on his chest plate, but he persevered, retaliating with suppressive fire. Despite being sniped again, this time injuring his left arm, Ford maintained his resolve. With a makeshift tourniquet in place, he continued coordinating the evacuation. During the firefight, Walding, despite the excruciating pain, quickly applied a tourniquet and injected himself with morphine. Determined to stay in the fight, Walding improvised, folding his mangled leg upward and securing it with bootlaces to his belt, ensuring he could still move and engage the enemy. Despite having his legs severed by a sniper, calmly making his way down the rugged terrain, Keeley and Scheidemann persisted in the intense battle for 3 relentless hours from their vantage point above. The F-15 refueled twice from a circling tanker before passing the baton to 2 other Strike Eagle crews. Despite the diminishing intensity, Keeley found it hard to depart until the fight had definitively concluded. "We had run out of gas and we had run out of munitions. You just wish there was one more thing you could do to keep those guys safe," said Keeley. As the wounded descended, Walton, Howard, and Carter stayed behind to protect the team and recover vital gear, including weapons left at the ambush site that they don't want the HIG combatants to recover. Carter retrieved the equipment, leaving behind damaged cameras. Howard provided cover fire while Carter gathered and discarded equipment off the cliff. With dwindling ammunition, Howard eventually withdrew after ensuring the team's safety. The intense battle resulted in the deaths of approximately 150 to 200 insurgents, numerous injuries among ODA 3336 and Afghan commandos, and only 3 Afghan casualties, including the interpreter for the ODA. Evacuated to nearby hospitals, the team and their Afghan allies received medical attention. When the dust finally settled, it was a scene of both triumph and tragedy. During the battle, Reiner directed more than 50 attack runs, using a combination of 4,570 cannon rounds, 9 Hellfire missiles, 162 rockets, a dozen 500-pound bombs, and 1 2,000-pound bomb. This data shows how intense the fighting was in Shok Valley. In the aftermath of the battle, as the echoes of gunfire faded into memory, the legacy of Shok Valley endured. Although the mission's primary target, Chig leader, former Prime Minister of Afghanistan, and heroin drug lord, legendary Mujahideen Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, was not captured. Considering that in the attrition tally, HIG definitely had more losses, the coalition forces were victorious on that part. In September 2016, the Afghan government pardoned Hekmatyar as part of a peace deal with Hezbollah Islami Gulbuddin. The agreement required Haig to cease hostilities, disassociate from extremist groups, and abide by the Afghan constitution. In return, the government recognized the group and supported the removal of UN and American sanctions against Hekmatyar, who was promised an honorary government position. Hekmatyar returned to Kabul on May 4, 2017, after 2 decades in hiding. Reports suggest that Hekmatyar and his organization joined the Taliban's Council of Reconciliation. In September 2021, he voiced support for the Taliban, and in October 2022, he advocated for intra-Afghan talks to establish an inclusive government, criticizing previous peace efforts for being influenced by foreign powers. In December 2008, the men of ODA 3336 were reunited and awarded 10 Silver Star medals, 2 Bronze Star medals for valor, 2 Army Commendation medals for valor, and 4 Purple Hearts at a ceremony at Fort Bragg, NC. They were part of one of the largest award ceremonies since the Vietnam era, where they were recognized for their bravery and heroism. Special Forces medic Ronald J. Schurer in 2018 and Weapons Sergeant Matthew O. Williams in 2019 were awarded the Medal of Honor for their actions during the battle. Schurer finished his tenure in the Army in 2009 and later joined the Secret Service. Unfortunately, on May 14, 2020, at 41 years old, he succumbed to an extended fight against lung cancer, a condition he was diagnosed with in 2017. Amidst the carnage, acts of valor emerged, manifesting the warrior's indomitable spirit. From Staff Sergeant David Sanders, who defiantly called for more airstrikes, to the last injured, Master Sergeant Scott Ford, who shrugged off mortal wounds to tend to his comrade. This video is a tribute to all the brave veterans who fought countless battles, from the battlefields to their personal lives back home. We are thankful for your sacrifices. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. To support me, please give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more updates.